Hey guys, so this is just going to be a quick run through of the Anki add-on Morphman. Now Morphman is truly a beast of an add-on, and there's a lot more to it than I can explain in a single video, but I've written a very in-depth guide on Morphman on the website, and so after watching this quick run through, if you want to get into Morphman, you have any questions, you want to know how some of the more nuanced features work, definitely go and check that out. And I also just want to say right up front that I'm going to be demonstrating Morphman for Anki 2.1, but there's also a version of Morphman for Anki 2.0 that works pretty much exactly the same. And Morphman, although it was made for Japanese, it also has limited support for use with other languages. And there is a spin-off of Morphman called Jiebamorph that has support for Chinese, but Jiebamorph only works on Anki 2.0. So in essence, what Morphman does is it goes through your Anki collection, and it looks at all your Anki cards and creates a list of all the words that you know. And then it uses this list to basically sort your new cards into an i+1 order. And so this has a lot of potential, but I think it's going to make more sense and be more clear if I just show you rather than explain it to you. So let's actually just take a look. So I'm going to start a brand new profile to just really give you an idea of how you'd set this up from the beginning. And so once you install Morphman and you open up Anki, the first change you're probably going to notice is that there's now a K and a 0 right up here at the top. So this basically just represents how many words that you know. The K is for know. And so as you use Morphman, this number is going to go up and up. And so because the way that Morphman works is by looking at the cards that you have already learned and using that to create a database of what you know, in order to make this demonstration really make sense, we're going to have to kind of assume that I already have some Japanese knowledge inside of Anki. So I'm just going to open up these two Tango decks, N4 and N5, and then in a second I'm going to tell Morphman that I already know all the words inside of this deck. So in order to set up Morphman, you want to go to Morphman Preferences. So when you click on Tools, you're going to notice three new options: Morphman Recalc, Morphman Preferences, Morphman Database Manager. But you really only have to worry about Preferences and Recalc to get started. The Database Manager has some extra features that I go over on the post that I wrote, but you don't really have to worry about that in the beginning. So if we open up Morphman Preferences, this is basically where you configure Morphman and tell it what you want it to actually do. So the first tab is the Note Filler tab. This one is the most important. So basically, Morphman isn't just going to go through every single card in your collection unconditionally. It's only going to go through the portions of your collection that you specifically tell it to. And so, for example, if I tell it to go through the custom Japanese note type, I don't care about tags, and then I want it to go through the expression field of the custom Japanese note type, and then the language is Japanese. And yeah, so it's pretty straightforward how to set this up. It has instructions right here, but basically you can make multiple different rows, and you just tell it exactly what portions of your database you want it to look through. Now, I will also note here that what this checkbox modify means is that if you check this box modify, then it's going to reorder all of the new cards that meet this description. But if you uncheck this box, then it's not going to reorder them. It's only going to analyze them and use that to make its database more accurate. And so I will also say right now that Morphman, it never touches the scheduling of cards that you have already learned. It only touches the scheduling of new cards. It only changes the order that new cards will be presented in. So you don't have to worry about Morphman messing up your reviews or anything like that. And so I'm going to uncheck modify in this case because I'm assuming that we're pretending that I already learned all the cards in this deck anyway, so it doesn't really matter. Now, if we go to the extra field tab, there's different fields that you can add to your note types, which Morphman will fill automatically to give you more information about the difficulty of your cards. Now, I explain what all these are exactly on the post, but the only one you really have to worry about for right now is focus morph. So in Morphman, a morph is basically just a word, and a focus morph is for an i+1 sentence. It's the one word or structure that you don't yet know. And you have to add this to your card in order for Morphman to function properly. But you can change the name to whatever you want. You could just call it i+1 if you wanted to. All that matters is that whatever you write in this box fits a field name on your card. So I'm just going to call it focus for now. And then similarly with tags, Morphman is going to automatically add and remove tags based off of the difficulty of your cards. And you can change the name of those here. So what I'm going to do is, because Morphman has a little bit of a weird way of referring to things, a vocab note is basically just an i+1 card. A comprehension note is an i+0 card. A fresh vocab note is it's basically a form of an i+0 card because it's a card where you already know all the words, but the words are not mature for you yet. They're still words that you've learned recently. So I'm just going to call that I plus 0.5. Not ready means that it's I plus 2 or more. Already known, I'm going to explain in a second. Priority, I'll explain in a little bit later. And then too short means the sentence is too short. Too long means the sentence is too long. Now, with the exception of already known, all the other tags are added and removed automatically by Morphman. And trying to add or remove any of those tags manually isn't going to affect Morphman at all. With the exception of already known, which is basically a tag that you add manually to tell Morphman that you already know all the words contained within that card. So if you learned something outside of Anki, and so you know this word, but Morphman doesn't know that you know the word, when a card that contains that word comes up, you can give it the already known tag, and then Morphman will just assume, okay, so you already know all the words in that card. And I'm going to demonstrate that in a second, so it'll become more clear. And then in general, basically, remember, a comprehension card is an I+0 card, and a fresh vocabulary card is an I plus 0.5 card. And so this is basically just skipping those so that you actually only see cards that are I plus 1. You don't want to waste time with stuff that's I plus 0. So keep all those checked off. So I'm going to hit apply, and then it's going to tell me to recalculate the database. So basically, through changing or messing around with the preferences, that's not going to actually make Morphman go through my database and analyze things. It's only going to go through my database when I run Morphman recalc. And so if I go and run Morphman recalc now, it's going to go through my database, create some database files, but we see that it still says that I know 0 words. And this makes sense because these decks are filled with new cards. It wouldn't make sense for Morphman to assume that I know words contained in new cards. It's only going to assume that I know words contained in cards that I've already learned. But for the sake of demonstration, we have to assume that I already know at least some stuff, right? So what we can do is we can go to all 2,000 of these cards and add the already known tag, like I explained before. So now that I've added the already known tag, if I recalculate the database, Morphman should assume that I already know all the words contained within my collection. And there we go. Now it says that I know almost 2,000 cards. So now let's say that I've been learning Japanese for a few months and I've finished learning these 2 decks, and then I get this other pre-made deck, which this is a deck that I made from the Dictionary of Japanese Grammar, all 3 volumes. It just has all the example sentences in all 3 volumes. And let's say that I wanted to learn this, but I wanted to learn the example sentences in an I+1 order. Or we can also say that I'm going to be sentence mining alongside going through this pre-made deck, and I don't want the pre-made deck to show me something that I already learned through sentence mining. And so basically we can tell Morphman to reorder all the new cards in this pre-made deck so that the most I+1 cards are shown to me first. So what we would do is go back to Morphman's preferences, add a new filter, and say, okay, for the Dictionary of Japanese Grammar card type, we want it to go through the expression field, it's Japanese, and then we are going to check off modify because we want it to reorder the cards. So now we're going to hit apply, and also remember we have to add the focus morph field to the card so that Morphman can function properly. So I'm just going to add that focus, and now recalculate the database. Now, the number of new words that it says I know shouldn't go up because, again, all the cards within the Dictionary of Japanese Grammar deck are new. I haven't learned them yet. But now the cards should have been reordered into an I+1 order. So if I sort it by when the cards are due, then we see that there's a bunch of crazy numbers on when the cards are due. And basically this just has to do with Morphman's algorithm. So the thing with Morphman is that it actually sorts your cards based off of difficulty, which means that the cards that are I+0 and I+0.5 are going to be at the top. So these are all 999 because they're all I+0. We can see right here it has the I+0 tag. But if we look over here at the side, Morphman has also added the cards that are I+0.5. And again, we're not going to actually have any that are I+0.5 because I+0.5 means that we've learned the word, but it's not mature yet. But we haven't actually done any learning. All we did was say that we already know all the words in these 2 decks, so it makes sense that there's no I+5. We have a lot of I+0, but then we also have a lot of I+1. And so when you go to the i+1, we see that unlike the i+0, which were all 999, there's a big variety in the actual numbers here. And that's because Morphman has a pretty complicated, well, it's not that complicated, but it has an algorithm to sort the ideal order of your cards past just the number of unknown words. So if there's one unknown word or structure, it's going to be i+1, but not all i+1 words are equal. It also takes into account the length of the sentence and says that sentences that are too long or too short are not ideal. And it also looks at how often the focus morph shows up within your collection. And so it's kind of a pseudo frequency. It doesn't actually compare the focus morph to an outside frequency list. It just compares it to how often that actual word shows up within your collection. And the more often that it shows up, the higher priority it's going to get. And also, I talk about in the post how you can also feed Morphman an outside frequency list and tell it to sort words that show up on that frequency list higher and other things like that. So this is pretty cool. Now we can learn all of the sentences in an i+1 order. And if we were doing other learning, like sentence mining and things like that, then every day we can recalc the database, have it reorder it, and words that used to be i+2 will become i+1, words that would have been i+1 will become i+0, and as long as you run the recalculate the database every day, then you're always going to be seeing the ideal cards. And so if we wanted to, we could just go in and delete all the i+0 cards. So it's pretty much as simple as that. You can see it's very powerful. You could also use it with subs to SRS decks so that you don't have to manually go through and find the i+1 sentences in an episode. You can just watch an episode, throw it into subs to SRS, throw that into Morphman, and have it automatically find all the i+1 sentences and save yourself a lot of time. So I'm going to be talking more about specific Morphman usages in the future, but I really think there's a lot of potential here. And the other thing that I'll say is that I also, in the post, talk about how you can use this other feature, the database manager, to basically catch Morphman's database up to knowledge that you gained outside of Anki. So you can do things like if you read a whole book, but you didn't Anki it at all, and so now there's a bunch of words that you know that aren't in Morphman, you can just tell Morphman that you know all the words in this book. You can just feed it the book directly and say, I know all these words, and it will take that into its database, and it will become that more accurate. So there's a lot of other tools and cool things you can do with Morphman that I didn't explain in this quick demonstration, but I detailed them all in the post. So hopefully that's useful to you guys, and that's about it. So I guess I'll see you guys later. Thanks for watching.